Here's what we required of them. The manufacturers had to validate their tests. We call it self-validation, similar to what many test developers in the world have done. They had to notify FDA that they had performed that validation. And then they had to label their products appropriately in the package insert with information about the validation, as well as the fact that it's not a diagnostic test, that it's an antibody test. And the bottom line here is that FDA still expects manufacturers and test developers to validate their antibody tests even under this revised policy. Now, we've done a couple of things to actually help end users, to help laboratories, providers, et cetera, states in terms of their use of these antibody tests. One is that we're working with CDC and NCI to actually validate some of the more than 90 manufacturers who've notified us that they brought their test to market, to do an independent validation. And that process is going. We expect to hear more information this week about that, and we will provide that information in a transparent manner. We also want to go after anyone who is saying that the test has been authorized or has been approved by the FDA, but actually hasn't. And we've authorized 4 applications for antibody tests, and 140 test developers are pursuing applications for us as we speak. So it's not okay for someone to say that a test has been authorized or approved by FDA when it hasn't, and we are pursuing them both by in direct contact with the manufacturers, but also at the border. And so we have increased these interdiction efforts, and we will continue to outreach and do that with the manufacturers to make sure that we provide the most up-to-date information to the end users of these products. And we will continue to make all of our efforts, both in the diagnostics and the therapeutics, to help America open up again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dr. Hahn? Dr. Hahn, you're speaking of 140 different developers, more than 90 manufacturers. How many of these tests actually work?
So as I mentioned, the 90 that have come forward and said they're marketing in the U.S., they are required by us to have self-validation, and they're required to label that appropriately in their package insert. And they also said that what we're doing is we're working with folks around the country, but here at home at the U.S. government with the NCI and CDC to validate some of those tests that have come forward to us. So we're actually doing some independent validation.
What have you done so far?
So we don't have those results yet. I expect to have more results this week, but we will be transparent about those results because I think it's very important. And your question is superb in that if someone wants to use a test that's come to market, really it's important to read the information that's in the package insert, but often in some of those cases it's also important for the independent labs to do the validation also. And you may have seen reports in the press of labs around the country that have done that. We've actually reached out to them, many academics, and we will be including that information in the information that we generate as well to provide to the American people.
Well, we have you here. There was a study out of the VA today on hydroxychloroquine that found a higher mortality rate compared to those who got standard of care. And I know this isn't a large-scale clinical trial, but since this drug is out there and people are using it, can you give some takeaways from that study? Did that change your thinking at all on hydroxychloroquine?
So this study is a small retrospective study at the VA, and similar to the data we talked about before with the French study, this is something that a doctor would need to consider as part of the decision in writing a prescription for hydroxychloroquine. And as I've mentioned from this podium and in other venues before, what FDA is going to require is data from clinical trials, randomized clinical trials, hydroxychloroquine placebo, to actually make a definitive decision around safety and efficacy. But the preliminary data are helpful to providers and doctors. I want to ask them to incorporate the data as we have it come forward. And it's not definitive data. It doesn't help us make a decision from a regulatory point of view. But doctors should incorporate that in the decision making they make on a one-on-one basis.
Is it just the timeline on the clinical trials and when we will be getting a readout of that data?
So the good news is we have over 30 clinical trials. Now the settings are very different. They're in the outpatient setting, they're in the inpatient setting, and also I think very importantly in what we call the post-exposure prophylaxis, meaning if you're a healthcare worker or a frontline provider and you've been exposed to the virus, take the drug for a period of time to see if you can prevent the development of illness related to the virus. So all those trials are in progress and will probably be early summer before we get a readout.
And Mr. President, if I can pick up on that, all of these tests, I want to say, are in addition to the tests that we already have. And we have tested more people than anybody anywhere in the world by far, by very far.
Mr. President,
Roger, you have a question?
well, I think You wanted to follow up on the
hydroxychloroquine. I'm wondering if you're concerned, this VA study showed that actually more people died that used the drug that didn't. And I'm wondering if Governor Cuomo brought you back any results.
No, we didn't discuss it, and I don't know of the report. Obviously, there have been some very good reports, and perhaps this one's not a good report, but we'll be looking at it. We'll have comment on it.
A panel of experts at the NIH is actually now recommending against the use of hydroxychloroquine in combination with Z-Pak, which is something you've recommended.
I'm always willing to take a look. Brett?
Another subject, you were signing the executive order. When do you plan to do that?
The executive order will be, it's being written now as we speak, probably tomorrow sometime.
So will it have exemptions in there?
We'll have certain exemptions because you're going to need certain exemptions, but we'll be notifying you tomorrow. We'll sign it most likely tomorrow, being drawn now and tonight. And it's something we have to have in this country. We have to have it.
So for the people who say it doesn't track with opening up the country to shut down immigration across the board for companies that, and the pipeline that's already in place, what do you say to them?
Well, I think it really does. I think it's very strong, obviously, and it's countrywide as opposed to specifically like China or some of the other ones that I've shut down. We're going to see it. You'll see a very accurate definition tomorrow after it's completed by the attorneys.
Last thing for me, North Korea. What can you tell us about the status of Kim Jong-un?
Well, these are reports that came out, and we don't know. We don't know. I've had a very good relationship with him. I wouldn't, I can only say this: I wish him well, because if he is in the kind of condition that the reports say, that the news is saying, that would be that's a very serious condition, as you know. But I wish him well. And we've had a good relationship. I've said it many times. If somebody else were in this position, we would have been right now at war with North Korea. And we're not at war, and we're nowhere close to war with North Korea. So I just have to say to Kim Jong-un, I wish him very, good luck. Good luck. I mean, they came out with very, very serious medical reports. Nobody's confirmed that. It was CNN that came out. So when CNN comes out with a report, I don't place too much credence in it.
The meeting with Governor Cuomo, did he convince you of a need for expanded testing?
We had a great talk on testing, and we have an agreement, we have an understanding on testing. They have labs, tremendous labs, as you know, in New York, especially in the Manhattan area, but all over the state. And great medical schools and federal labs. So we have a very good understanding. We're going to do very significant testing. Not everybody wants to do such significant testing. Testing is good in some cases, and in some cases it's not. You have governors that don't want to go all out in the testing because they think they can do it in a different manner and do it better. But we had a very good meeting today. The governor and I had a very good meeting.
Is there more federal aid that can be used to help governors who want to expand testing? Because we keep hearing that all day long.
We have $25 billion, and that's a tremendous amount of money. That's much far more money than, in my opinion, that we'll need. And again, already we're testing more by far than any country. I think I read yesterday a report that we've done more than everybody else, every other country combined, and I think our people should be getting a lot of credit for that. We've done a lot more than everybody else combined, and you never hear that in the news. It's unfortunate. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, I'm just back on the executive order for a second. You mentioned there are going to be some exemptions. We're reporting right now that it only applies to employment, green cards for employment, but not to those for
Green cards, but we're going to be reporting on that later on. It might be tonight or tomorrow. We'll give you an exact report.
You can say people who may be worried about the ability to bring immediate family members into.
No, I think it's been covered pretty accurately in this case. I think most people know what it is, and some people will be able to get in. We have to do that, obviously, even from a humane standpoint. But there'll be some people coming in. But it's a strong order. It's a strong order. It involves a big circle, as you know. Please.
Immigrants who are already in the country, are they at greater risk of deportation based on this order?
I don't think so. They're not supposed to be here. You're saying they're here illegally? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for example, if an immigrant is here for a court order, right, are they at risk of deportation?
Well, a court order, then you have to go to court. So then the judge would make a determination as to whether or not they're going to be staying. But if they have a court order, they won't have to leave until they go through that process. So we'll see what happens. But with the court, and there are some with court orders, that means they have a trial coming up. Please.
And so, obviously, on the immigration executive order, you raised concern for a long time, even in good economic times, about immigrants taking Americans' jobs. So, under what conditions would you consider lifting this halt on immigration?
Well, we would, yeah.
Or is this sort of an opportunity to address what you've seen as a problem for a long time?
Well, I think, look, right now, obviously, we had the greatest economy in the world, and then one day we had to shut it down. They said, you have to shut it down. We did the right thing, because I think we would have had 1 million or maybe even 2 million, or maybe more than that deaths. So we did the right thing. But certainly this would pertain. I mean, when you look at it right now, the last thing we want to do is take American workers' jobs. It's one thing when we were essentially, they used to call it full employment, and it's another thing right now. Right now we have people that have lost their jobs, and we hope they're going to come back and come back fast, and then we can have an even deeper discussion. But right now we have to have jobs for Americans.
Would you have any sense of, like, if unemployment gets to 4% or 5%?
We'll have to see. I mean, I hope we're in that position to have that debate. Right now, we're not in that position. Right now, we closed down the largest economy, the greatest economy in the history of the world. It's the most successful economy. When you look at the stock market, we're breaking records virtually every week, sometimes every day. And stock market's still not doing badly considering what this country's been through, which really tells you how strong it was in the first place. But no, I hope we're going to be able to have that discussion. I hope we're in a position. That's like a good discussion to have, but that'll be a little bit later. Brett?
I have a question for Dr. Birx about the CDC director said in an interview that perhaps this second wave of the coronavirus in the fall could be worse because it is timed with the seasonal flu. Just wondering if you could talk about that in context of as you're opening up the country and these guidelines that you've laid out.
Yeah, so we were very clear in the guidelines that we believe we can monitor communities at the community level by using the influenza-like illness and the syndromic respiratory and gastrointestinal components of this particular virus. Obviously, when we have flu, we're working on an algorithm that you test for flu, and then you test for COVID, and making sure that we are building the testing capacity to be able to do that. Because I think it's very important that you're going to be able, on the surface, a patient when they come in with early flu and early COVID can look very close to get identical. So we need to have testing in place to be able to separate and ensure those patients receive the best treatment. We're also hoping by that time that we have additional treatment options for people with COVID-19, so that there will be additional treatment available in the fall.
Your message would be to prepare for that time, thinking that it'll come back together.
The president has made it clear that we have the emergency, which we have been working on, the opening up guidelines, and just like he talks about phase 4, he has us very much working on the next 60, 90, and for all on with fall, and that's why he's not stopped any of the ventilator orders. It's very important that we have a completely refreshed and a comprehensive stockpile going into the fall, and I think that's why we continue to bring in those shipments and work on the ventilators so that those would be available not only for the United States, but certainly if other partner countries have this level of tragedy.
Follow up on that. So you agree this could come back actually worse in the fall?
I don't know if it will be worse. I think this has been pretty bad. When you see what has happened in New York, that was very bad. I believe that we'll have early warning signals, both from our surveillance that we've been talking about on the vulnerable populations. We're going to continue that surveillance from now all the way through the fall to be able to give us that early warning signal. I think what we've learned is how good Americans are about immediately reverting to all of those issues that they need to do in order to ensure that they're protected and their families.
Mr. President, what do you say to the concerns like Georgia is opening up barber shops and bowling alleys and the like? And you saw Lindsey Graham is saying he's concerned that Georgia may be going too far too fast and could affect people in South Carolina. Obviously, people travel back and forth between states. How do you protect the people of South Carolina, for example, from a potentially bad decision by a governor in Georgia.
So he's a very capable man. He knows what he's doing. He's done a very good job as governor, Georgia, and by the way, and South Carolina. Governor McMaster also. So you have two very capable people. We're going to find out. And in fact, I'm scheduled to speak to the governor of Georgia in a little while. But we'll find out.
Graham's concerned that what happens in Georgia can
Well,
affect
everybody have a concern about what happens everywhere. I mean, we've got those concerns. And as far as coming back, if they do come back, and they could come back together with heavy on the flu and much lighter on, because I really believe we'll be able to put out the fires. You know, it's like fires. And we've learned a lot. You know, we've become very good at this. When you look at what's happening, when you look at the numbers coming down, a lot of states are in really great shape. Going to see a lot of openings. But I'll be speaking to the governor of Georgia in a little while.
Okay. Mr. President, so the American people need to be prepared for going back to social distancing, even if things relax over the summer, but come the fall, if the virus comes back in coincidence.
Well, I could see them, and I'll speak for the doctor, and if you'd like either of you to say, but I would say that you keep away until this thing is gone. It's going to be gone at some point. It's going to be gone. And I would say you keep away and you do the social distancing until such time as you know it's gone. We'll know when that time is.
Your executive orders last for 60 days. How will you decide whether to extend it? Does it
Well, I'll look at the economy. I'll see where we are with the economy, basically, and I think I'll have a very easy decision to make. I hope that the economy is going to be great by that time, but we'll see. But right now, in light of the fact that Americans are out of jobs, I can't be taken in.
Roll it for another 60 days, or?
Well, I could roll it for 30 days, or I could roll it for much more than 60 days. We'll have to take a look at the time, but we'll be looking at 60 days, and we'll see what it is. Yeah, you got it?
And there is reporting that
Under immigration order.
So you go, why don't you go, and then you.
Okay, on the immigration order, we'll continue with that. There is reporting that you may actually sign a second order to even limit more of those exceptions that you were just talking about. Can you confirm that
It
you
could
are
happen
considering?
if I want, but I won't be doing it tomorrow. I'll be signing the primary order, and then we have a secondary order that if I want to do that, we'll make that determination. We can do that, yeah, we can do that at a little bit different time if we want.
But that is under consideration at this
Yeah,
time,
sure,
second order?
secondary orders, yeah. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions, one from me and one from a reporter who couldn't be in the room because of social distancing. That's pretty good. So my first question is about your immigration order. You campaigned on reducing legal immigration. I remember your speech in Phoenix in 2016 on reducing legal immigration.
I campaigned on legal and illegal, but no, I've always said you have to come into the country legally, so not legal. What I campaigned on was people just flooding our border and stopping. And by the way, speaking of that, we have 170 miles, almost 170 miles of very powerful border wall up, and it's moving rapidly, very quickly, and it's having a tremendous impact, and it's making our job a lot easier. Plus, Mexico has 27,000 soldiers right now on our southern border that we share with them, and Mexico's been terrific. They've really helped.
You also campaigned on reducing legal immigration. And I'm wondering if some critics are saying that you are using the virus now in this crisis to follow through on that promise to reduce legal immigration.
No. Well, I want people that are in this country, I want our citizens to get jobs. I don't want them to have competition. We have a very unusual situation where something came in that nobody has seen for many, many decades. Probably 1917 would be the closest analogy if you look at it, when you look at the contagion, the kind of contagion we're talking about. So no, I'm not doing that at all. I want the American worker and our American citizens to be able to get jobs. I don't want them to compete right now. There's a big difference when we have a full economy, and frankly where some of the companies, we have many companies moving in where they need workers. That's a big difference between that and where all of a sudden a lot of people lose jobs.
As you know, a lot of farmers rely on seasonal migrant workers that come in on the
affected. The farmers will not be, that's an important point. The farmers will not be affected. Yeah, that's a very important point. I mean, it's a great point, actually. I'm glad you brought it up. No, the farmers will not be affected. They've had cases where they stopped everybody from coming in, and all the farmers went out of business. They were literally out of business. You remember that, Brett? It was not so long ago, but it's easier to stop everything cold than it is to plan it so that the farmers have the people that have been working on those farms for many years, and that's what we're doing. No, the farmers will not be affected by this at all. If anything, we're gonna make it easier, and we're doing a process that'll make it better for those workers to come in, to go to the farm where they've been for a long time.
Now for a question from reporters out of the room, this is from the Washington Times, Tom Howell. Why hasn't the CDC, the federal government's main disease-fighting agency, had a more public-facing role amid the pandemic? It was holding regular media calls early on, but has not held one since early to mid-March.
Well, I can't tell you that. CDC has been terrific. We've worked with them very closely. They were very much involved, even in the border decision that I made last night. And the director's doing a good job. And we have always, whether it's Tony or Deborah or Steve, we have always a lot of people up. And certainly, as you've seen, the director's been here a lot, right? He's been here, he's been sitting here, he's been speaking a lot. No, CDC is very much involved in everything we've done.
The director of the CDC said that protests against stay-at-home orders are not helpful. You've encouraged some of these protests. What are your thoughts on the CDC director saying these protests are not a good idea?
People, look, it's not a question of helpful or not. People want to get back to work. And I've watched some of the protests, not in great detail, but I've seen that, and they're separated. There's a lot of space in between. I mean, they're watching, believe it or not, they're doing social distancing, if you can believe it. And they are, and they're protesting, but the groups I've seen have been very much spread out. So I think that's good. Look, people, they want to get back to work. They got to make a living. They have to take care of their family. They don't want to do this. It's, unfortunate, maybe one way or the other. Both are unfortunate. But you have a lot of people out there that are anxious to get back. Yeah,
The survey seems to be indicating that people are actually more concerned. More people are concerned about the virus spread, and they don't want to go out.
Yeah, no,
they don't want to go to work. They
they're
don't want
both,
to go outside.
they're two groups. They're both big groups, both of them.
So my question is, what good is it for these businesses that would reopen if the customers are
Well,
afraid
at
to
the
go
same
outside?
time, we have to build back our country, and I'm going to make our country bigger and better and stronger, and we have to get started. There's a big difference, though, because people have really been through a lot, and they understand what to do now. Before, nobody had ever heard of a thing like this. Wouldn't you say? I mean, nobody ever heard of a thing like this. Distancing, social distancing, what does that mean? Washing your hands every 15 minutes, what does that mean? I mean, people had never seen or heard about anything like this. Now they really are. They've not only have they done it, but they've done a good job of it. But you have people, you can't break the country. At some point, you have to go back. Now, hopefully the governors are going to do, because I want the governors, and I've always wanted that. You could call it federalism, you can call it whatever you want. But the governors, I want them to do it. If we see them doing something we don't like, we'll stop it very quickly. But they're doing a good job. They're being careful. Some of the governors, frankly, they're in a position where they can do it sooner or they can do it a little bit later, and that's okay. But people, they don't want to, they need money, they need help. We're going to lose, and we can't break our country over this. We can't do it. We have to get going. With that being said, some are going to go soon and some are not. Yeah, in the back, please.
If I might just, pardon me, hair salons, nail salons, tattoo parlors.
Yeah.
Dr. Birx, can you weigh in on this? Because the people of Atlanta want to hear from you as well, as much as they want to hear from their governor and from you.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
How do you safely have hair salons and nail salons and tattoo parlors where people this is in Georgia, where people have to inherently be close together?
I think what I've been trying to communicate over the last several days is it's really important that the governors and mayors communicate critical information to their communities and show very clearly the data. Remember, we wanted this data and evidence-based, the data that they utilize to make decisions and the data that the mayors should use in each of the communities, because it will have to be on a community by community opening, because there are different communities in different places, even in Georgia. And so I believe people in Atlanta would understand that if their cases are not going down, that they need to continue to do everything that we said: social distancing, washing your hands, wearing a mask in public. So if there's a way that people can social distance and do those things, then they can do those things. I don't know how, but people are very creative. So I'm not going to prejudge, but we have told people very clearly, and the president guidelines made it very clear about the expectations of phase one. And remember, phase one also included social distancing in restaurants, social distancing in every place that was entertainment, and keeping your own individual social groups to less than 10. I mean, we've been very clear in the guidelines, and I think it's up to the governors and mayors to ensure that they're following the best they can each of those phases to make sure that both the public is completely protected. But the governors and mayors also need to communicate very clearly on the data that was used for decision making and make that transparent and available to their communities.
We want to have you back soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. All right, there you see the President of the United States wrapping up his press briefing. Welcome to Special Report. I'm Brett Baer. We're doing it tonight from the White House briefing room, a little bit different tonight. We've just watched the daily coronavirus task force briefing. President Trump saying he will be temporarily suspending immigration into the United States for 60 days because of the coronavirus. An extension is possible, he said. It'll be evaluated. Suspension only applies to those seeking permanent residency. The order is currently being written, may be signed tomorrow. We're following some major stories tonight, but we wanted to bring in John Roberts, whose seat usually is right here, Chief White House Correspondent. I took it over for the night. John, thanks for letting me have the seat. I wanted to talk to you about this immigration order and what we know. He said there will be exemptions, especially for farmers.
Yeah, I mean, there will be a lot of exemptions for farmers who have to bring in temporary labor to do the crop picking. There are also, right now around the world, thousands of au pairs who are lining up to come in to help child care for middle-income families. Those people come in on a temporary visa, not seeking permanent residence, so they would likely be allowed in. There are, of course, a lot of people who would like to come to this country once the travel opens back up again on a tourist visa. Those likely wouldn't be affected. The president was pretty specific, Brett, in saying it's just people who are looking for permanent resident status in the United States, the so-called green card applicants, who would be affected by this initial 60-day ban.
The other interesting thing I thought was the interchange about North Korea and what we know or don't know. Didn't shed a lot of light about Kim Jong-un, but wished him well. It's interesting to see those reports. We just don't have firm knowledge of what his status is tonight.
No, and there's an awful lot we don't know coming out of North Korea. A lot of this is emanating from South Korea. Sources that I have in the administration have been telling me to be very cautious about the reporting, that there's a lot that's come out from South Korea about North Korea that turns out not to be true. But it is curious that some significant events that Kim Jong-un would have likely gone to had been missed. So there is some suspicion here among top administration officials that something may have happened in North Korea. They just don't know at this point what.
All right, John, thank you from the North Lawn, and thanks for the seat tonight. I thought we'd do it a little differently. Finally, tonight we want to end with some good news, the brighter side of things. Members of the NYPD went out of their way to make sure a 90-year-old Korean War veteran was taken care of when they discovered he was having trouble getting his groceries. The officers went to a local grocery store, bought the man food for the week. Ken, a 94-year-old World War II veteran, sleeps with a photograph of his late wife every night. An employee of his at his elderly care home in England surprised him with a special gift, a pillow with his wife's photo printed on it. That's a good one. And New Yorkers applauded essential workers yesterday.
That's Jay and Barbara.
The residents performing a tribute to the city from his back.
And that would be me and you. I guess this is in, where's this in?
That's great. Thanks everybody. It's in your home tonight. A little different tonight. Thought we'd get on the air. Fair, balanced, and still unafraid. The Story, hosted by Mark McCallum, starts right now.
Brett Baer, a good reporter.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is The Story. So moments ago, President Trump weighing in on Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's measures to reopen his state beginning this Friday. Governor Kemp is allowing a wide range of businesses to get open again. Restaurants and theaters are going to be open on Monday after the Friday openings. All must follow social distancing and other safety measures. Watch this.
But the governors, I want them to do it. If we see them doing something we don't like, we'll stop it very quickly. But they're doing a good job. They're being careful.
So Governor Kemp is going to join me in moments. He's here to respond to some heavy criticism of his plan and even potential legal action against it. Here's Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms.
We are going to have to figure out if we legally have a grounds to put in different orders in place within the city of Atlanta.
Restrictions are loosening elsewhere in the South as well. Take a look at these. May 1st in Tennessee, a majority of the businesses are going to be allowed to reopen then. Also South Carolina, certain retail sales and the beaches are going to open at 20% capacity. That is the South Carolina plan right now. So let's take another look at Georgia here. Georgia's population is 10.6 million people. As of noon today, 3,700 of those 10.6 million are hospitalized with COVID-19, and they have had today 799 deaths. Now, it has been 14 days since the projected peak of daily deaths in Georgia, according to the widely cited IHME modeling. Now, that model assumes that current social distancing policies stay in place throughout the next couple of months. So let's bring in the governor from Georgia, Brian Kemp. Governor, thank you very much for being here this evening. It's good to have you with us. Let me begin, I guess, by asking you, great to have you. Let me ask you to respond to the Atlanta mayor, because obviously Atlanta is a very dense population, and she clearly has some big concerns about reopening the places that you would like to open.
Well, Martha, look, the mayor and I have a great relationship. She's working very hard, just like all local elected officials are, to protect their population. I'm doing the same thing. We've worked together on a lot of things. I've heard her comments about this issue, and I've certainly had a lot of praise and a lot of criticism, but we're taking a measured step. I would urge people to really look at the guidance that we're going to be putting out the rest of the week. I announced this on Monday so we can have time to educate the public and the business owners that this is just not handing them the keys back to go back to where we were. This is a measured approach with a lot of different requirements and guidance that we're going to be putting out. And I'm very confident of that step. It was done in conjunction with public health officials based on the data that we're seeing in our state and the gateways to the phase 1 part of the president's plan.
All right, so, we just watched Dr. Deborah Birx, and she was questioned about your plan to reopen on Friday. And she said, that she feels it's incumbent, and I'm paraphrasing, incumbent upon governors such as yourself to be very transparent about the data that you used to make this decision. So can you explain to everyone at home tonight, what is the data that brought you to this conclusion, especially given the fact that deaths are still rising in Georgia? What data did you use?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand how the data comes in. A lot of the data that we're posting today, the testing or the fatality may have happened, 5 or 6 days ago based on the type of reporting that's being done. I mean, look, I spent all weekend working with Dr. Toomey, who's a, great epidemiology, a great public health official, one of the best, I think, in the country. I did not make this decision without her support. We poured over this data. We're looking at all kind of different models. I've had hospital CEOs that I've been in contact with that reached their peak way back on April the 6th. I've spoken to them about the idea of doing some elective surgeries. They were supporting that decision. They support a measured opening, which is what we're doing. It's going to be very limited in scope, basic operations. We're talking about a few businesses that I closed down to help flatten the curve, which we have done in our state. But for us to continue to ask them to do that while they lose everything, quite honestly, there are a lot of civil repercussions of that, mental health issues. We're seeing more patients in our trauma centers in our state. because people are just, you know, they're tired of it. And it's a tough balance. And I understand where folks like the mayor and others may agree or disagree. I got some people that are protesting me because I took this step, and I may have others that protest me because I didn't go far enough.
Yeah, understood.
But what we've been doing, you know, Martha, and I'd like to just explain too, you know, we took measured steps to get to the shelter in place, and now we're taking measured steps to come out of that. This is not a giant leap forward.
Well, explain. Can you tell me what you mean by that? So, for instance, is it in Atlanta? If someone wants to get their nails done or their hair done on Friday, or a tattoo, or go to a gym, I mean, these are very close contact kinds of businesses that are the first ones on your list. Can you explain why you would start with those kinds of businesses on day one?
Well, those are the ones who are closed. The other businesses in Georgia are still currently opening under the order that I have now, and we're coming down. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. But you also have to give that fitness owner or that owner in a hair salon the ability to be able to be a partner in this fight that we're in. You know, they're going to have to follow the strict guidelines. I would tell you that I imagine there'll be people in gyms that'll be a lot safer than they would be going to the grocery store or some of the other places of business that are part of the critical infrastructure that's been designated at the federal level. You know, this is going to take some common sense. Our people in our state have learned a lot through this. They have helped us be a solution to the problem, to flatten the curve and to start getting on the other side of this. Our hospital capacity, you know, you have to remember the reason we did this to start with is so we had time to build up hospital capacity. We are having, you know, record vacancies in our hospitals right now because we are getting ready for the surge. They are bleeding money, and they need help as well as, you know, our local business owners do.
I understand that.
So we're prepared for, you know, what may come with this, and we're prepared to act. We're ramping up testing. I talked extensively about that in my press conference on Monday. We have almost 3,000 National Guard troops that are cleaning long-term care facilities. They got 10 mobile testing sites so we can go to hot spots, whether it's long-term care, other vulnerable populations.
Certainly sounds like he knows what he's doing.
This is going to allow our public health officials to do contact tracing, which is another part of the plan that Dr. Burks talked about.
I got a couple questions. I'd love to just get in a couple quickly with you if I can. You said that businesses have to screen for illnesses. How are they going to do that? So just give the gym example. If someone wants to walk into a gym in Atlanta, and we just heard the mayor doesn't think that Atlanta's ready for this. If I want to go to the gym in Atlanta on Friday, how are they going to screen me?
Well, it's not saying they've got to screen them. These are best practices. They could do temperature screening. You know, they can do the verbal guidelines that all businesses should be giving their employees now, educating them. You do not come to work. You know, the potential for testing now and in the future. So, you know, there's common sense things that people can do. And listen, we're already doing that with businesses in our state. You know, I got heavily criticized for keeping our state parks open and our beaches open, and we've had absolutely no problem with allowing people to go out and get some exercise. They have practiced social distancing. They have behaved themselves.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had people from other states coming to Georgia because they had closed their parks.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of widespread, you know, why we had to close all the parks, I think, is one of the big questions that a lot of Americans have. But I just want to stay with you on this point because, you know, screening. So let's say that the gym decides that they're going to test everybody's temperature when they walk in. But as we all know, there are asymptomatic people who are contagious to every person that they come in contact with potentially. So once you've got a fever, it's already too late. You've already, you know, been 5 days of being someone who can spread that disease. So how are you going to screen these people who want to go to these businesses?
The same could be happening.